The SeaWorld 2021 hype continues because we were literally just talking the other day on this channel about how SeaWorld Orlando may be planning a B&M wing coaster, but news has just emerged from BGWFans.com that Busch Gardens Williamsburg is planning something a lot larger and a lot weirder. What the heck is this? This might be one of the most bizarre roller coasters I have ever seen, and we're going to talk about it in today's video. The first thing that I need to mention is that you should go read this article. It's going to take some time, but trust me, this is an excellent read. Go read that article and then come back to this video so you can hear my thoughts on it, because there's a lot of really good information there. These guys go so in depth with every little thing about what you can expect. Now, if you're new to this entire project, this is the first time you're hearing about it. It all goes back to a few years ago when Busch Gardens Williamsburg was doing the sightline tests and proposals for a 300-foot tall roller coaster. So we were like, oh man, they're building a Giga. And it was called Project Madrid. That turned into Pantheon, which is obviously not a Giga. But then that same sightline test was then moved from the Festa Italia area into the back part of the park near Oktoberfest in Verbolten. So what we believe happened is that Pantheon and this coaster coming in 2021 were originally designed to be one ride, which suddenly, once you say that, this ride starts to make a lot more sense. That would have been an absolutely massive project, but I can see why it didn't work out. I mean, just logistically, how do you have it go across the river? So many variables. So I can see why it was split up into two and that we're getting them back to back. So of course we know all about Pantheon. This ride has a lot of similarities, but also a lot of differences. This ride does go over 300 feet, and technically speaking, if we're calling this a Giga, which frankly, whether you count this as a Giga coaster or not, we're not really going to get into that argument in this video. The main thing you need to know is that this coaster will be the tallest of the Giga coasters. The sightline test that they were doing was for a 355-foot tall height, but when you look at the lowest point of this terrain to the highest point, you're looking at about 375 feet, and once you factor in sea level, 435 feet. So this ride is big, but it is drastically different from every other Giga out there. I think a lot of us, when we initially heard that Busch Gardens was going to be doing a project like this, we were thinking, oh, they're probably getting a Red Force. You know, launches you straight up and you can come back down. But because Pantheon has a top hat and a couple launches, I kind of get why they didn't go that route. But the fact that they went with this type of ride, it really makes you wonder what the heck they're thinking over there. Because this ride doesn't make really any logical sense at this park. This will be the third coaster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg to have a swing launch, aka you launch one direction, you fall back, you launch again, and traverse that same launch section a couple times. Because we have Tempesto, we'll have Pantheon, and then we'll have this thing. And if you actually count the number of launches at Busch Gardens Williamsburg after this thing, you're looking at an unbelievable 12. 3 on Tempesto, 4 on Pantheon, 2 on Verbolten, and 3 on this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that is the most launches in one park in the world. So weird. It's crazy. So if you ask me, this ride doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but is going to be very cool just because of how weird it is. Like, if you like weird rides, oh boy, you're going to love this thing. Because all this ride really is a launch section, a spike, a bank turn, and another spike. It's like they took the layout for a family boomerang coaster and said, what if we did that but 300 feet? And the footage that we've been showing you of this animation for this upcoming roller coaster really got to emphasize this is not the final product. This is just what some fans are taking their best guess of what it could be. And actually, they did a really nice job considering what we had to work with at the time. They're made by Calvin and Jake. I'll throw a link in the description of their videos. But the big thing in this video that we know is not accurate is that massive spike. It will not be a beyond vertical spike like the original guess, but rather it will be a spiral. We know this because the track site plans have been uncovered from Busch Gardens, and when you look at the support structure for what will be holding this thing up, that sure does look like a spiral to me. Look at something like Wicked Twister, that support structure looks pretty similar. And actually, I'm kind of glad that it's a spiral and not beyond vertical. Beyond vertical definitely would have been cool, but you have to remember, when the general public sees that, they're going to say, oh, it looks exactly like Pantheon spike. And you don't want to make Pantheon Spike irrelevant by building this ride. So a spiral, it's very different, it's going to feel different, so I'm down. The last thing I'll mention that we know about this animation that is 100% different is that last launch going into the spiral. In this video, you see how long that launch section is that really propels it up there. That launch section is not going to be as long, which means it's going to be accelerating at a faster speed. With a longer launch section, it'd be a more gradual launch. So the fact that it's going to be shorter is a good thing, if you ask me. So now that that information has been said, let's kind of outline this ride experience. So when you go to ride this, the entrance will be back by Fest House behind Verbolten in the spot of where Drachenfire used to be. This will be reusing Drachenfire's old station, but it'll be using the land that Drachenfire sat on in a very different manner. The plaza for this ride is going to be right underneath that first spike. You can even see here a general idea of what the queue will look like, and of course that leads into your station. When you get the all clear, you're going to roll forward onto your first switch track, park at the launch, and launch backwards. Now the reason we're saying it's going to launch backwards is because this bank turn is not going to be ridiculously high, and so I can't see them launching forwards and having it not being able to clear that, because it would have to be a pretty weak launch. It would make a lot more sense if it launches up to a pretty good speed backwards. You go backwards up that first spike, and then you really start building speed, heading maybe like 80 miles an hour. You go through this twisted over bank turn, and then you hit that last launch right before the big spike, and that's what speeds you up to maybe 105, 110 miles per hour. I think that big old spike is going to be pretty scary. It doesn't even look real. Like, obviously this is an animated video, but looks like something that could never possibly exist. Who would be crazy enough to do it? Well, apparently Busch Gardens Williamsburg and Intamin. I personally am not expecting this to be everyone's fan favorite, but it's going to be one of those weird bucket list coasters that you're going to want to do just because of how ridiculous it is. And I hope that everything goes well for them, because we know that some Intamins in the past have been not the most reliable. We don't even know how Pantheon's going to go over yet because it's not open. I hope that that is reliable. But something like this, you can't help but look at it and think, man, I wonder if this is going to be one of those rides that's going to be plagued with issues. Especially when you have all those launches, you have that massive spike, you have the switch tracks. I hope that everything works out well, but I look at some rides that didn't last too long and it just makes you wonder, is this going to be one of them? Will it be one of those coasters that ends up not being open very often or has a short lifespan? I don't know. I hope the answer is no and everything goes great. But this is one of the few coasters that I look at and I'm like, man, I don't know how I feel about this. It's just like something we've never seen before. The one thing that I think could be a wild card with this coaster is what happens in those straight sections. In the animation, you can see they're saying, okay, what if it has these two little airtime humps during the ride? But we don't know for sure that's going to happen. That's just what the creators of this video are guessing. But maybe it's just a flat, straight launch, or it could have one big airtime hill in the middle, kind of like what Pantheon is doing. I don't know, but I would be very curious to find out. If there's anything here that we can't deduce yet, it's what the trains are going to look like. Okay, hear me out. What if this coaster had some backwards facing seats? Think of something like what DC Rivals has, or what the Swarm had at one point. This way, you would actually be launching forwards into that first spike, hit the rest of the launches backwards, but then when you reach the top of the second spike, you'd be facing down and you would go through that drop, that 300 plus foot tall drop, facing the ground, which I think would freak a lot more people out. Facing the other way, you're just kind of staring up at the sun. But with backwards facing seats, you'd then go through that entire layout again, but facing forwards. I think that would be awesome because it would also give people the option of where they want to ride, and it would encourage them to ride more than once because you'd get a slightly different experience depending on which direction you're sitting. So I think if there's anything that they could do to this coaster to really round out the experience, that would be my suggestion. And that's not even discussing what theme they're going for, what the station's going to look like, what the plaza will look like. No, you want to make an even bigger impression? Don't worry about all that. Just put in some backwards facing rows. Do that, and man, you're gonna get a pretty cool ride. So I guess to just kind of wrap this video up, my general thoughts on this thing, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it at all. I think it is one of the most ridiculously absurd, bonkers, flat out stupid rides I've ever seen. Like, I cannot believe that one of my home parks is building this thing in 2021. It blows my mind. Kingsman and Bear have something real good to replace Volcano, because with what Busch Gardens Williamsburg is doing, they gotta step up their game. Because while it's just been revealed that Busch Gardens Williamsburg will be getting a new coaster in 2021, King's Dominion is gonna be taking out the crypt. Yet another ride unexpectedly being taken away from us, and it's really unfortunate. But anyways, I want to hear what you guys have to say. Do you agree with what I've mentioned? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you just not know what to think like me? Post all those thoughts down in the comment section below. And of course, as we learn more information and details about this project, I'll be sure to produce a new video for you guys. So hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and stay tuned for more here at Coaster Studios. I'll see you next time.